That music always gets me going, gets me amped up, ready to go. Um, so welcome to Sitting with Sean, episode number 38. Today we have a very special guest, Jonathan from Rochdale, UK. How are you doing this morning, John?
I'm doing good, Sean. Thanks for inviting me on. Let's see what we can share with people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I met John on Facebook. I posted up a thing and he responded, and I was like, sounds like a really interesting guest, and I think that you guys are gonna really enjoy this episode. It's pretty cool, his story and everything like that. So, John, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't like that word formal
Okay.
but yeah, I'll give you some background and feel free to
Okay.
butt in at any point or ask anything. I suppose we have to start at the beginning. I was born on the 13th of August, 1975. That just puts it in perspective. I'm 47 now. That'll make more sense when we go along because there's some crazy shit happened over the years. And I was born whilst my parents were travelling with Gandhi's circus here in England because my dad's was a circus clown, he's a clown, and also did a what they call a yogi fakir act, like Coney Island, bed of nails, ladder of daggers, fire eating, that kind of stuff. Whilst my mum was doing a whip cracking, sharp shooting, cowgirl western, Wild West kind of type act. So I was born on the circus. So to me, I grew up in that environment. Okay. So I went at the age of 3 and a bit, as is usual and traditional in the circus. First opportunity that they can get the kids involved and learning stuff that they do. Well, in my case, that meant that I became Flat the Clown, Britain's youngest paid circus clown, possibly the world's at the time, although I know somebody has definitely stolen that title since. Um, which is fine because it's not really a title I'm not fussed about. But yeah, actually, somebody's literally used their baby dressed up as a clown in their clown routine. So I think they were a matter of a few months old, so they've not just brought the record, they smashed it. But I'm over that. Honestly, I'm over that. But yeah, 3 and a bit, I was Flat the Clown. So I was already getting conditioned by my environment, the circus, into an audience clapping and laughing, but laughing in a manner where it's meant to happen at the right
Yeah.
times. So that it was a positive applause and positive laughter that I got, frankly, addicted to. Okay. And that'll become clearer as we go down the timeline. But I was getting addicted to this from an early age because you'll hear about performers, adult performers, actors, film stars, and all that have turned to drugs, alcohol, gambling, sexual addictions, and all manner of other escapism things. Say that they've done that to try and help them handle the time when they're not in front of an audience or they're not on stage or in front of the camera, because those are the times when they feel most alive and worthwhile. It's part of who they become.
Yeah.
Which will become very relevant as we go on. You don't have to be in show business to kind of be able to relate to that. It could just be that you've got one area of your life where you feel safe and in control, and everything else kind of makes you feel what's going on. It's that kind of thing. So yeah, that was when I was 3 and a bit. Now, by the time I was about 6 and a bit, my mum, who didn't come originally from a show business background, wanted me to have a kind of more normal upbringing than going to a school in one town for a week and then a different one elsewhere where the circus moved to. So she insisted on getting a house. And then me only being able to do shows at the weekends, after schools if the show was nearby, or the school holidays. But my dad would obviously carry on travelling here, there, and everywhere. And that's what happened. But unfortunately, you see, at the age of 6 and a bit, going to this school for a period longer than a week, it wasn't a novelty that the circus kids in town. It was they've got long enough for the novelty to wear off and look into it. And then when you start appearing in the national media, as I was doing, it becomes a thing of you're the odd one out. You're the clown. You're from the circus family. And it may not be obvious to people who are watching the video version, can I keep my hair short? But when this grows, I've got ginger hair as well, which is another target for bullying. So, you know, I had all these reasons why I was stood out, and I did get relentlessly bullied at that time by the teachers, not the pupils, the teachers at that school. And I can only now, with hindsight, put it down to the fact that when they'd seen me in the national media, they very quickly worked out that I was earning more pro rata, hourly rate wise, as it were, than they were. Maybe not my yearly income, but hourly rate wise. Perhaps that caused the jealousy, it was the attention I was getting, God knows. But they made my life hell. The kids were fantastic at that school in Ainsworth, I have to say that. But it got so bad that I literally begged for us to move because there was no other school in that village. And before I was 8, we did move to Haywood, about sort of 15 or so, no more, close to 20 miles away, probably, where there was another school. Well, there was various schools there, but I went to one, St. Luke's Church of England school. And I'm delighted to say that the bullying from teachers stopped immediately. It just never happened there. The teachers were brilliant, supportive, fantastic at their job, encouraging, supportive. If I appeared in the media, they thought it was a good thing. Things couldn't have been better in terms of the teachers.
That's amazing.
You probably guessed a big but there, Lord, coming up. But the pupils. This time it was the pupils where the bullying came from. Once they discovered I was the clown, the circus clown's son, I was from a circus and I was appearing in the media, I was getting bullied on, well, a daily basis. Not necessarily physically every day, but more often than not, as well as verbal. And anyone who ever said sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me, was talking complete and utter bullshit, as we'll go into more about later. So things went from bad to worse, but I had my moments of escapism where I was doing shows at the weekends or in the evenings or school holidays, and an audience would clap and laugh at the right times, and that made me feel worthwhile as a human being and helped to cushion the negativity that was growing, you know, the lack of self-worth and self-esteem that was growing, and the negative stuff from the consequences of the bullying. By this point, sort of by the time I was about 10, I was getting very resentful towards my dad, in the sense that my I say false logic, but there is some logic to it as well, was that it's my dad's fault. If I hadn't been born on the circus and pushed into performing, then I wouldn't be the odd one out. I wouldn't be getting bullied, and I wouldn't feel like I do when I'm not performing. So I I rebelled rather, by turning around and saying, I'm not going to perform as Flap the Clown anymore. And I didn't. I refused to do it. But the thing was, I was still addicted to an audience clapping, laughing at the right times, that appreciation. So I carried on performing, but not as a clown, but as just doing what had been prior to that point my hobby, magic, conjuring tricks, to get the audience reaction. And that worked to a degree, but I still got bullied because of appearing in the media. But it helped a little bit, or at least I thought it did, because of the weird logic that was running through my head. And there's no sense when you're fighting internal mental battles, as anyone who's done so will already be aware. And just before I went to, I believe in America they call it high school, we call it secondary school here. So I was probably around 11-ish. If I'm a few months out either way, or anyone watching or listening to this who went to school with me, don't shoot me for it, you know. roughly about right. The bullying got so bad, and I felt that little voice inside my head, and I don't mean like schizophrenia. We all have. Just because you hear a voice in your head doesn't mean you're schizophrenic or strange. Everybody has that internal self-talk. Hopefully for people, it's saying, yes, you can do this. You know, you're going to get through this. But for some people, unfortunately, there's times where it might start being more negative. You're not good enough. You don't deserve this. Well, that's the way the voice had got through repetition of negative conditioning. And so much so that one day in autumn, I think, in England, but I think they call it fall in America, the time when it gets darker quicker in the day. I went and lay down in the main road, Queen's Park Road in Haywood, knowing that the traffic was so bad there that they weren't being laid down, nothing would see me, and that would bring an end to it all. And I lay there for what seemed like forever. But, you know, as I'm sure everyone's experienced, there can be times in life where an hour feels like 5 minutes when you're with somebody you love or a friend you've not seen for ages. And then there's other times where, you know, 30 seconds or a minute can seem like hours. Yeah. So I don't know exactly how long I was laid down. I know it felt like forever, but in the end, no traffic came, which was unheard of. So I stood up and started making my way back to the pavement, sidewalk, sorry. And I put my first foot on the pavement or sidewalk, and at that very moment, suddenly, whoosh! A big articulated lorry, a big truck, suddenly whoosh past at major speeding. If I'd have been late, that would have ended it all if I'd have been in the road. And in that second, I thought, well, I shit myself. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And there was also a sense of relief of, thank fuck, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And many years later, I saw online and was told about, in fact, I'm pretty certain it was my wife told me about this, that she'd seen on the internet, people who'd dived out of windows in multi-story buildings with their intention to end it all. And the moment, and some of them miraculously survived. Mm-hmm. And when they were interviewed, they said they realized once they dived out of the window, they only had one single problem in life. And that was the fact they just dived out of that window.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a lucky escape. And in that moment, I thought there's got to be a better way of dealing with this. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I figured there had to be something that could be done. And I used to go to the adult section in the library because by this point, my magic skills were so advanced and I was doing performances professionally and getting paid for it. The books in the kids' library, I was way beyond the content of them. So my mum had managed to arrange it with the librarian that I was allowed to take books out of the adult library. And in the Dewey Decimal numbering system for library books, which is pretty much universal worldwide, where the sports and pastime section was, is where the hobbies books were, and conjuring and magic tricks. And I was getting one out one day, and I looked slightly to the right, and I noticed at the side of me a section that was called, I'd never noticed it before, that was called Self-Help and Popular Psychology. And I saw a spine of a book, and it was called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And I thought, this is it. It's like a sign. How to win friends and influence people. If I can kind of learn that and influence the bullies to be my friends, then they won't bully me. This is the holy grail I've been seeking for. So I got the book out, read it, and tried some of the techniques out. And what I very quickly learned is this. And with hindsight now at the age of 47, I can tell you confidently that that book is fantastic for adults to use the techniques within with common sense with other adults. It doesn't work very well for a 12-year-old with other 12-year-olds. In fact, if anything, it probably made the bullying worse.
Yeah.
And even as an adult, if you use some of it too literally, because one of its key things is that people's name to them is one of the most beautiful words on the planet, and they love to hear it, which is true to a degree. But if you took it literally the way it says in the book, then you as an adult could walk into a pub or a bar, meet someone you never met before, find out their name and start using it in every sentence, which would become ridiculously annoying to that individual and probably cause you to get punched in the face rather than it being a wonderful relationship building technique. So, it basically just didn't work. However, a couple of weeks later, I saw a book called Day by Day in Every Way by a French guy called Émile Coué, who's no longer with us. He was one of the founders of behaviorism psychology. And he's most famous for the personal affirmation, self-suggestion of day by day, in every way, I'm getting better and better, which studies have shown that if you say that to yourself about a dozen times, first thing in the morning when you wake up, well, before you wake up, so when you open your eyes and you're still, I need to wake up properly. This is what's called the hypnopompic state of mind, where you're more suggestible. The critical faculty of your brain is not fully functioning yet. So if in that moment that you open your eyes, you then say to yourself 12 times, and in that process, you will start waking up. But you say to yourself, day by day, in every way, I'm feeling better, I'm getting better and better, or I'm feeling better and better. And then at night time, when you go to bed and you've started yawning, but you're still awake, but you're at that yawny stage, that's called the hypnagogic state. And you do the same thing 12 times. And you may not even, it'll become the next morning. You'll forget, you'll probably drift off to sleep doing it. But this will, because your critical faculty is going to sleep or not fully woken up, depending on whether it's night or morning, will go into your personal laptop computer, your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, plant itself like a seed, and over a period of time of repetition of weeks and months, grow to the point where it helps influence your internal voice to tell you you are worthwhile. Now, there's more advanced techniques than that now that have been developed, but I found this book. It had that technique in it. I started using it myself, and I did start to get more resilience and more inner strength, I'll describe it as. And so I didn't feel quite as bad, but I was still getting bullied until I found the section in his book on what they call the law of reversed effort, which in neurolinguistic programming they term it as what resists persists. And there's two elements to that. One of them is that you get more of what you focus on in life. Now, this is why people can change what's in their laptop computer, but it's also, if they don't go about it the right way, the reason why you could read all the self-help books on the planet and consciously try to change your thoughts, feelings, energies, emotions, and reactions, but either it only works for a short period of time, then it wears off and people relapse to their previous habits, addictions, fears, anxieties, phobias, or whatever, or it doesn't work at all. And that's because people often make that mistake of focusing on the idea of, I don't want to have a panic attack. But that's entertaining the possibility that you could do. So you're actually focusing on the possibility you could have one and making it more likely you will have one, rather than focusing on, I look forward to each day getting closer to having a life where I feel calm, relaxed, and confident in all situations and environments. Now that becomes believable to the mind because we say day by day it's getting easier and better. Whereas if you said, from this moment forward, I don't, my life is completely wonderful, but your mind wouldn't process it or believe it because it knows it can't be that simple, that quick.
Yeah.
Hence the example, which you can always rewind and listen to rephrase it. And it allows it to incrementally occur. So one little success builds to a bigger one and so on. So it becomes believable so that your conscious mind doesn't have to have that conflict going on with the unconscious mind where the negative programs are running. And it allows over time evidence to overwhelm the unconscious, subconscious mind so that it goes, this old program that's running, it's no use anymore. We can delete it and replace it with a positive one that allows you to be the person you deserve to be and always should have been. And then there's the law of reversed effort, which I describe easiest as, if you look at the Star Wars films and see Yoda, he says, do or do not, there is no try. Because if you try to do something and you say consciously, I'm going to try and do this, try and stick to my New Year's resolutions, well, what you're actually saying is there's a possibility you could fail. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to try. You'd just do it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I read this and it gave more examples. And I thought, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. So the next day when I was at school, what normally happened is bully would come up with his entourage, his crowd, pin me against the wall by the neck, give me some verbal insults and whatnot. His crowd would laugh. And then he'd hit me, let go of me, walk off, and they'd all be laughing as he muttered some other nonsense. That was pretty much the daily routine. And that was the pattern, the routine that the bully expected. Because there's another technique comes in here in this example called pattern interrupt, although I didn't realise that at the time. So the next day, the bully pinned me against the wall. And as that's happening in that moment, that split second, rather than just standing there saying nothing and hoping it'll all be over and done with rapidly, I quickly said, don't bother with your nonsense insults and fucking ridiculous comments. Why don't you just hit me now if you're going to do it? Go on, try and hit me now. And I had nothing to lose because that's what was likely to happen. But in that split second, their eyes kind of glazed over. And you could tell they got into a state of disorientation and confusion, which I later learned is very similar to the state that people go into when they go into hypnosis. So they got into the state of disorientation, confusion, sensory overload, you may say. And also there was that law of reversed effort coming in, try, which implied they wouldn't be able to. And all this melted together and suddenly they just let go of me. Still looking befuddled, turned to their gang and said, we're off. And as they were walking off, just turned and said to me, don't effing come near me ever again. Well, I had no intentions of doing. Where's the thing? They didn't come near me again. And in that day, I thought, wow, words structured in the right way and also used in the right psychological manner can stop me this bullying that's been. What else could it do? And that's when I went on a quest to discover. And that quest meant that by 1989, when I was 14 years of age, I became the youngest ever member of the Association of Professional Hypnotherapists and Psychotherapists here in England, and started treating people to help them overcome the habits, addiction. Now, I lied about my age in the local adverts because I figured they might not believe a 14-year-old could help them change. Mm-hmm. And that's true. A 14-year-old couldn't help them change, really, but neither could a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50, 60, 70, or 80-year-old. Because the real truth is, all I did as a therapist, or do as a therapist now, or all any therapist does, is act as a catalyst to enable the individual to believe that this important seeming ritualistic process will help them change and give them an environment where they feel safe to change, permission to change and leave behind that baggage of the past, that self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret, and help them to trigger off processes that happen within the individual themselves. Yeah. That's why there's this saying that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. Well, it kind of is and isn't at the same time, but the thing is, it does all happen inside you as the human being. And I just guide people, you know? So yeah, that's how I got led into all this.
That's amazing. That's a really inspiring story. And I mean that's really inspiring.
And I forgot to mention, there was a time. Now that's how I got led into it. And it helped me with the bullying, but I'd not totally healed myself, because when I left school, before I was 18, let's put it that way, before I was 18 and a half, definitely, there was a short period of time where I did develop addictions to cocaine, alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, but to a lesser degree. And I now know, looking back, that they were escapes and distractions because I'd not fully dealt with the trauma that the younger me had experienced. And it wasn't just from bullying, because I look back, there was, you see, as an adult, what we deem as trauma what might be to think of child abuse. If a child was sexually abused, that's traumatic. Yep, no question in that. If a child is told they're not good enough, or you've got ginger nuts, your ginger nut job, we as adults don't tend to, unless we've experienced similar, to think of that as being potentially traumatic to the degree that it could be causing mental health issues.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and it isn't really as an adult, generally speaking, if you're in a good balanced state of mind and body, then something like that happening to you as an adult won't be traumatic. If it's a one-off, if it happens regularly, it may become so. But again, if you're perfectly balanced from your upbringing, you'll probably deal with it in a better manner. But if you've had experiences that even as an adult might seem non-traumatic, but as to the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old, the 7-year-old, the 8-year-old, all the way up even to teenage levels, can I believe from birth? I mean, Sigmund Freud said the formative years were birth to 7 years. I actually believe it's probably birth to around teenage puberty.
Yeah.
The little things have a massive impact beyond that we're consciously aware of. And they, because our critical faculty, analytical area of the mind that separates the conscious and the unconscious, hasn't fully formed, I believe, until teenage years.
Yeah.
These things go into our personal neck-top computers and get stored and run as programs. So from the teenage years onwards, even if we consciously are setting our mind on doing X, Y, and Z, sometimes the reasons it doesn't come out the way we'd like it to consciously, or the way we don't end up feeling the way we thought we'd feel, is because of the programs that are already running in the unconscious mind that are in conflict to the conscious, and the unconscious will always win because it has to be more in control than the conscious mind, because it's your unconscious mind that basically keeps you alive and make sure that you breathe without conscious thought, that makes sure that your heart keeps beating. It's pretty damned important. So, and it doesn't know if it's got negative programs gone in. That's the job of the critical faculty. So what you need to be able to do, and it wasn't until I'd done this for myself, and also with the help of a third-party therapist initially, although now I know and have formulated ways that I can teach people, and do teach people in my book that we'll come to later, where they can do this themselves. But one of the key techniques is to help heal that metaphorical inner child. Or to put it another way, is to be able to go into your personal neck-top computer, delete those traumatic files from the past so they're gone, or not so they're gone, but so that the traumatic impact is reframed to one where it is with the perception of an adult now, but also with the feelings of an adult now, so that the young internal you in that frozen state of mind, rather than feeling scared, trapped, vulnerable, not worthwhile, or a whole bunch of other potentially negative things, suddenly instead feels, and I'm just going to find the exact chapter in my book so I can read a little section, feels like all that negativity from the past has been removed or dealt with, rather than having to remain that scared little frozen metaphoric inner child in your subconscious that's holding you back. And one of the ways is that I blended a thing called Ho'oponopono, and I probably pronounced that wrong. Some people say Ho'oponopono, but it's the Hawaiian love and forgiveness ritual. And isn't it great that I'm looking through my own book here and finding it really difficult to find the section that I was looking for? Well, anyway, I'll tell you from memory. Okay. There's a process that's fully dealt with inside Shitnosis, helping you to get over the shit in your life and get your shit together, where you can guide yourself through imagination in your mind and the use of a big pillow or a big cushion to give you a multi-sensory experience, where you hold the big pillow or cushion with your eyes closed and use self-hypnosis techniques so that it's almost as if you can imagine that what you're holding isn't a cushion or pillow. It's a younger you when you were 1, year old, then 2 years old, 3, 4, 5, and you can run through the years and give the reassurance to the younger you that the younger you, if they'd had that reassurance, that feeling of safety, that feeling of it's not their fault, and all these other things I go into in the book at that time, it would never have imprinted itself as a traumatic memory. So we go back and let them feel those things. We go back and, we say things to the younger us like, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I'm here for you. Everything's going to be okay. You are worthwhile. And there's various other sentences that are in the book that, as daft as it might sound, relating it like this, I defy anyone to go through the process the way it's explained in the book without probably breaking down in tears and having an emotional release. But they won't end up feeling upset as they do that. They'll realise that this is a true sense of relief. It's like letting the steam out of a steam kettle that's been boiling in the hob for too long, and whistling away. It's like taking the thing off the end so it stops whistling and just feels like letting it out. And you do genuinely feel as though a huge weight's lifted off your shoulders. Genuinely. Well, by performing this metaphoric imagination exercise. Because the thing is, the human brain doesn't know the difference between something that's imagined or reality. At a deep level, it doesn't. That's why anxiety and stuff and panic attacks are caused by imagining something negative in the future could occur. Well, it hasn't occurred yet, but your mind imagined it to a point that you have the panic attack. And depression is being stuck in the past or thinking it's always going to be as bad as it was in the past or that it could get worse. So the key is you need to be able to release your ties to the traumas of the past or the fears, false evidence against reality of the future to enable you to live in the here and now. Which is why two of my favourite sayings, albeit they're cliches, and I'm sure people have heard them before, and when I say it, there'll be people who currently perhaps experience panic attacks going, it's not that simple. And there'll be people who have depression cycles who will say, it's not that simple. And I've got to say in advance, no, it isn't that simple. If it was that simple, my book would only be 4 or 5 pages long.
Yeah.
And it's not. The book, which is the experience of my past 47 years on this planet, is actually 200 odd pages long, but it's not just that. It's also got these things in, QR codes, loads of them, that take you to online videos that expand on the contents of the book and give you interactive training on techniques you can use in your everyday life. And it's only through learning those techniques and then, more importantly, putting them to use on a daily basis so that day by day, those little wins, those little achievements build up to be bigger achievements and bigger wins, so that a month or so down the line, you look back and go, wow, it's amazing where I've got to in the past 30 days. So it does take effort. So I'm not telling you it's as simple as these cliches, but you will look back eventually when you use techniques daily like those in this book and end up going, well, it kind of is that easy. It's just that I needed to put a little bit of effort in every day. So 2 cliches. 1, yesterday is history. Tomorrow, the future is a mystery. Mm-hmm. But today is the greatest gift of all. That's why it's called the present. And then there's another one that's more financially based, which is that yesterday is nothing but a cancelled check. Tomorrow is just a promissory note, no guarantees. Whereas today is cash. So spend it wisely. And what I mean by these cliches is that we each have, good God, I'm having a mental block. It's something like, you know what? I'm just gonna type it in Google.
Google's the best friend sometimes.
Yeah, we each have the same 1,440 minutes in a 24-hour period of time. we each have the same 86,400 seconds in 24 hours. Now, if I told you, here's £86,400, and you've only got 24 hours to spend it, because at the end of the 24 hours, anything you've not spent is gone. You don't get to spend it. I'm damn certain you'd find something positive to spend that $86,400 off, £86,400 on, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You would.
Absolutely.
Even if you only gave what you couldn't spend for yourself in that time period to charity. If the rule was that there was any left in the bank at the end of the 24 hours, it was gone forever, you'd do something with it, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
So why do people so often get stuck in a rut and sit on their ass when they've only got 86,400 seconds? And in truth, they need to sleep some of that as well in that time period. It's because they become blinkered to, and this may sound like I'm oversimplifying things, but it is as cold and harsh as that. And the human beings are programmed naturally by instinct to do one of two things: avoid pain and seek out pleasure. But here's the weird thing: people sometimes get used to the pain level of their life, and it becomes their comfort zone to remain in that pain. And the thought of moving out of that daily pain to something better actually becomes more scary and painful a thought than remaining in that pain cycle they're currently in. If we're totally honest with ourselves, I've been there. It wasn't until I helped heal the metaphoric inner child, until I started using techniques that are taught in the book, certain things where, if you're feeling stress, tension, anxiety coming on, there's certain pressure points you can tap, or there's certain breathing exercises you can do, combined with certain things you can say to yourself through your internal voice, that they meld together and help you get through that moment there and then, and help avoid it happening like that ever again in the future, so that your daily successes build up to ultimately be where you want to be. So in the limited time we've got today, if anything I say sounds flippant or whatnot, please be aware that it most definitely isn't. And that's why it's not just a 250 odd page book. It's got the QR codes in. There's no upsells with this, because anything I know of worth is in this book. It's not that there's going to be a volume 2 come out, because there isn't a volume 2. I'm 47 now, and I'm pretty certain in my work over 3 decades with clients, helping them change their lives, but 47 years of being alive myself, that by now I've tested out pretty much everything out there, and the crap I push to one side, and what I've termed shitnosis, helping you get over the shit in your life and get your shit together, it's the cream of the crop, so to speak. It's the things that work for me, but the things that have consistently worked for my clients. And I would much sooner somebody invested 17 United States dollars, which is £14.70 sterling, for that book, than spending hundreds of dollars to book a one-to-one session with me. Because all I would do in a one-to-one session, all of the techniques I could ever possibly use with you are in this book, including actually QR codes that take you to me, guiding you through the techniques. So it's almost like having a session with me. Because I'd sooner make this affordable to everybody, because my aim is to sell 1 million or more copies of this book before I'm 60. Because I'm not mega famous. If I was mega famous, I'd say I'd do it in the next 12 months, 18 months. And it'd be great if I did. And yeah, that'd make me a couple of £1 million, because I get a couple of dollars a book royalty, being honest and upfront with people. But it's not going to make me super rich, super fast, or anything like that. But I'd sooner that than people coming and spending several $100s with me, because then they perhaps still feel like part of their healing process was that they had to see a therapist. And my message is that you don't, if you know the techniques, and they're in this book. The only real reason why there's an importance to seeing a therapist really is that you've been led to believe that in the past, and also society has come to believe that. Let me give you an example, Sean.
Mhm.
Let's say our imaginary individual, Dave, has a cocaine addiction and he's had it for a number of years. And one morning he wakes up and he goes, I'm wasting my money on this. I turn into a right arsehole at family events. It's upsetting family. And you know what? I'm not going to buy any today. That's it. I no longer take cocaine, which incidentally is what I did that years ago. One day I woke up, not taking it anymore, and I didn't. It is fully possible to do that once you've got techniques to rely on to help overcome the cravings and side effects and whatnot. But if you've got a severe addiction, always seek conventional medical advice. And the reason I say that is because I'm not saying, if you've been an alcoholic for years to suddenly stop drinking alcohol, because that could actually kill you.
Yeah.
Okay. So always seek independent, conventional medical advice. But it is possible, is the point. I did it. But here's the reason why most people aren't able to do that or think they're not able. And if they think they're not able, then that belief system in itself will cause the failure. It's because Dave wakes up, he decides not to, so he doesn't buy any. A few days later, he bumps into a friend or family member who says, wow, Dave, your skin's looking better. You seem to be thinking clearer. If you don't mind me asking, are you still on that nonsense cocaine? And Dave goes proudly, no. You know what? A few days ago or a week ago, I decided stop taking it. What happens is the family member goes, well, if it was that fucking easy or similar, why didn't you do it sooner, you idiot? Which makes Dave feel bad for having stopped. Maybe not a conscious thought process, but back here. And therefore, when this happens more and more, people go, why didn't you do it sooner if it was that easy? This is what ends up leading to relapse. Because by relapsing and going back to it, that proves it wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
And stops Dave from feeling bad about stopping. Unfortunately, it puts him back to being addicted to it. Whereas if Dave gets told by a friend, hey, perhaps you should check out this guy's website, and they go and visit the website, maybe just for example, ultimatehypnosiscourse.com, which just happens to be one of my websites, and they go and they look through it and they go, wow, this guy's got people saying their lives changed for the better after going and seeing him. Now, yeah, $500 or £500 sterling, which is about $650, seems a little bit expensive, but all these people are saying it's changed their lives. Social proof, evidence. I'll save up the money. So Dave saves up the money, books a session, goes and sees the therapist, goes through some sort of important seeming ritualistic process, whether it's called hypnotherapy, Tibetan mind control, doesn't matter. The key is it's some form of important seeming ritualistic process in an environment where Dave's made to feel safe, worthwhile, and given permission to change. And he's also kind of given an invisible force field to leave the office with, because as they leave that office, they can metaphorically leave behind all that self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret of the past. If the therapist is good and has guided them through it, then their internal inner child will have healed their traumas. And any imbalances the individual had, because the only reason people end up with habits, addictions, fears, or phobias, or panic attacks, or depression, or whatever, is because they feel that something missing. Okay, because every human being by birth, by nature, even if they're not consciously aware of it, okay, needs to or wants to at an unconscious level, okay, and I can't stress that enough. You may not consciously be aware of this, but needs to feel to function harmoniously, loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued. And they sound very similar, but if you check them out in a thesaurus, they all relate to different things. Some relate to self-confidence, some to self-image, some to self-esteem, some to self-control, aka willpower. So if there's a lacking or an imbalance in any area of how the person at an early age and growing up feels loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, or valued, then it will have a knock-on effect on their levels of self-confidence, self-image, self-control, aka willpower, and self-esteem. And if there's an imbalance there, it will have a knock-on effect on their feelings of self-worth, self-love, self-respect, and positive selfishness. And what I mean by positive selfishness is like being on an aeroplane. Rather than sticking the oxygen mask on one of your 3 children first, then potentially passing out and not being able to put the mask on the other 2 kids, you selfishly put it on yourself first, but it's positive selfishness because it means you will not pass out and are able to put a mask on all 3 of your kids. Sometimes you've got to look after number 1 first. You've got to be selfish to be selfless. And if there's any imbalance on them, ultimately it's going to have an imbalance or chip away and remove some element of how the person feels, their self-identity.
Yeah.
And that's at an unconscious level. So self-identity is ID, the id. The conscious mind is the ego. It's the ego and the id that they talk about in psychology. And there can end up being a gap. And some people want to fill that gap with religion. Praise the Lord. Nothing wrong with that if it makes them feel better. Some people feel it with going to the gym and doing too much exercise. Some people try and eat too much to bury the problem. Some people use smoking to create smoke screens. Some drown, fill it up with alcohol. There's lots of metaphoric ways it gets handled with. But most all of them have a negative impact because the imbalance causes something that ends up being negative. So all I do as a therapist, or more importantly, because you don't need me, all that you will learn to do with Shitnosis and the various techniques in here, such as SCAT, subconsciously charged analytical tapping, which is a tapping method, such as, this chapter's called How Your Head Got So Full of Shit, plus Why Your Life Is Sometimes Shit. And it does. It explains it to you so you understand consciously, but then you also know what you need to do to your unconscious, subconscious mind. The next chapter, sit down, relax, let it go. Are you emotionally constipated? The positive mind laxative of self-hypnosis. And we teach you the self-hypnosis techniques to heal yourself. Then we've got self-shitnosis, which is the exact step-by-step approach to reprogramming your personal desktop computer. This section, which is fantastic, the mind bleach mental antivirus. I'm trying to get that at an angle so it doesn't reflect too much. There we go.
There we go.
And bleach stands for buried and laid emotions and energies, altered, accepted, and cleansed healthily. Kills 100% of all known negative mind germs. I liken that chapter to techniques that are like giving you mental antivirus software for your personal desktop computer. So you can stop shit from affecting you in the future the way it once did in the past. Because the fact is, shit happens in life. It's how you deal with it that matters. So we need, it's not just about getting rid of past traumas. It's about being ready for the future. Oh, yeah, here we are, making peace with and healing your inner child. We got that chapter there. And those, the elements of the Ho'oponopono prayer, but used with the big pillow. And the way it's taught in here is, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm here for you now. It's not your fault. I'm proud of you. Everything's going to be okay now. And this used, the way the book explains, helps you to unfreeze that frozen in time trauma so you can move forward. We've got the SCAT process, subconsciously charged analytical tapping, enabling you to knock all the negative shit out of yourself. And it's a meridian tapping, energy healing thing. It's a mind distraction that helps you overcome panic attacks, anxiety, feelings of stress. We've got mind emotion liberation techniques, melt, to help you melt your issues away in the moment. And then one of the most powerful sections of the book is the shithead protocol, which is subconscious human interaction therapy, helping everyone achieve destiny. This is a way to communicate with your unconscious, subconscious mind, your personal desktop computer, whereby you end up getting little idiomotor responses. So you talk to your subconscious, ask it questions, and it will make one of your fingers move slightly for yes, one of them moves slightly for no, and one for maybe. And you can actually have a conversation with your imagination. Ask it to change things for you. So it will then help you delete, erase positively and permanently the negative files that have been holding you back and help you install the positive programming to move forward with your life. you know, that's why it's a really interactive book, and there's videos as well with the QR codes for people. We've got the butterfly techniques section. Now, anyone with anxiety attacks may have already encountered some of these techniques in this section, such as getting your hands and making a butterfly on your chest and gently tapping, and it helps you control your breathing rhythms and stop. But this is on acid because it tells you how to use them combined with self-hypnosis techniques to make them even more powerful and effective. And of course, we've got the Fuck That system, which stands for Fully Unconscious Conditioning Knowledge Therapy, honoring absolute transformation, giving you techniques galore for different situations. Because rather than selling you numerous different self-help books, I put techniques in here that will work to overcome habits, addictions, fears, and phobias. I put techniques in here that will help you overcome and prevent anxiety or panic attacks, or to deal with depression until you get to a point through those little wins building up to a big wins that you don't have those issues anymore. I put things in here that can help you in the workplace, in your relationship. It's some of these things in this book you may never use in your life. You might be lucky enough you don't have those issues. But anything you could ever need, that's the key, you will find somewhere within here. It is hot shit, so to speak. And one of the things, going back to Dave, is if Dave goes to a therapist or gets a book like this, although you need a white lie with this book, which we'll come to, but Dave goes to the therapist, goes through the process, and leaves. And then he bumps into the family member who says, Dave, you're looking good. What's happening? And Dave says, well, I've not touched cocaine for a week or two or a couple of months. And the family member goes, well, how did you do that? And Dave goes, well, I got told about this therapist and I went, and it was quite expensive, so I had to save up the money, otherwise I'd have done it sooner. And then I went to see them, and I've also got techniques that I've got to use on a daily basis that help me to keep it, you know, like watering a plant, and it grows stronger until the point it can take on the graces forces of nature, but it still has to be watered and grow till its roots are planted enough. It's a bit like that metaphorically, but I've done that now, and yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing my life as the person free of cocaine that I've now become. And the family member could turn around and go, well, if it's that simple, why didn't you do it sooner? But Dave's automatically got this safety shield. You can go, well, I only recently found out about this therapist and I had to save up the money, and then I had to wait to get an appointment to see them. Yes, I wish I'd done it sooner, but I didn't know about them and I wasn't able to get an appointment sooner. And because of the way that reframes everything, they don't have to feel bad about not having done it sooner, thus not, you know, reducing the chances of relapse, because they don't have to feel bad about it. Now, in my book, I know that a book is not the same as sitting in a room with somebody, but your family and friends don't know whether or not you've actually physically been to see a therapist or not. So why not? And I explain it more in this book, but this one page right near the beginning, I'll read to you. Because I explain how people normally go to a therapist, and the largest part of the healing process is the fact that they've got that invisible force field to help them. Well, guess what? If you read this book, you are worthy and deserve happiness. I give you, as the author of this book, the experienced mind therapist of over 3 decades, permission to change. And so much so that I encourage you to check out the QR codes in this particular chapter that will take you to pages where there's evidence of the people I've helped over the years. So you can then totally have faith and belief that the techniques you'll learn in this book, when you put them to use for yourself, will enable you to live the life you deserve to live. And in fact, I encourage you to make those changes. So why don't you use me and this book as your excuse for not having made those changes until now? Because it's time for you to take positive action. It's time for you to make those changes. So if there's things you've not been doing that you want to do, then now is the time for you just to do it. If there's things that you've not been doing, that you have been doing, that you no longer wish to be doing any longer, then now is the time for you to just stop it. And then there's a link to the comedy video, Stop It, a sketch by Bob Newhart that people can look at on YouTube. And that's the perfect point after reading that chapter in the book to watch that sketch and realise it can be that simple. Because I do suggest you tell the little white lie, and if your friends say, well, how have you stopped smoking? How have you lost that weight? How have you overcome that phobia? How have you stopped the panic attacks? Which you'll be able to do when you utilise the techniques in Shitnosis. Just say to them, I just became aware of this international celebrity hypnotherapist, Jonathan Royle, of ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. And I consulted with him, and I've been using techniques with him interactively, which you will have been if you use the QR codes. You won't be telling a lie, actually, because you will have interacted with online videos. And I've gone through therapeutic processes with him, which you will have done, but they'll perceive it that you've gone through therapy in a consulting room. And now I've left behind those negatives of the past. And you will have the same force field acting on your behalf as you would have done if you spent hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars seeing a therapist to give you that safety shield. Well, you can have that safety shield for $17 or £14.70, because it's as long as you actually but to use the techniques inside the book. You don't just read the book and your life changes like that. No. And any personal development author, self-help author who implies that, and sadly many do, is full of shit. You actually have to take action and use the techniques as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I notice in my field is you're talking about the childhood trauma, and childhood trauma plays a big factor in the lack of the ability of the person to handle future traumas. Is that something that you've come across?
Massively. Ultimately, of course, every that applies to everyone. It doesn't mean they were sexually abused. Some people are. It doesn't mean they were physically beaten up, although some people are. What it means is that as the child, whether 1 year old, 2, 3, 4, all the way through to teenage years, that the way they handled a situation through no fault of their own, just because of where they were in life, to them it seemed traumatic. It could have just been being told they weren't good enough, or being told, we reckon you'll fail in that exam. Or, we look at that as an adult and go, well, you could have got over it. Well, no, it ends up frozen in time. And if I can to answer that wonderfully, I'd just like to flick back to, I just need to find a picture of the baby again, frozen in time bit. I've got here. I'll just read it here because it's a couple of pages. Obviously, the QR code is something that people then have to watch the video, but it just says making peace with and healing your inner child. Now, you will have heard me talk about our inner child during the videos of the Royal event, to which there are QR codes in the first chapter of the book. For many, making peace with, and thus in turn helping to heal your inner child, can prove massively and positively life-changing and transformational in its subsequent results. And yet the process of self-healing when used is extremely simple, as I explained during the interview with personal development coach Karen Roberts at this QR code. Then there's a QR code where I teach what we spoke about before with the pillow and the cushion. As mentioned in that video, the wording used in my inner child therapy is largely based on the words and process of the Ho'oponopono prayer. The elements of the Ho'oponopono prayer are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. It's very touching, especially given how simple and universal these words are and the emotional impact they have for everybody on some level. With regular practice, repetition, reciting these 4 simple phrases helps develop self-love and self-esteem at the times when we need it most. I've also added to those these extra elements. I'm here for you now. It's not your fault. You are not to blame. I'm proud of you. Everything's going to be okay now. You can, of course, also say anything else that you feel your inner metaphorical child needs to hear in order to move on from their frozen in time state. That's what I refer to it as. Do not underestimate the extremely positive and powerful nature of this simple approach, as I can assure you I have on many occasions, and I mean many occasions seen it prove to be almost miraculous in terms of the positive life changes those who have used it then go on to experience in all areas of their lives. It's truly now time for you to grow up, but to grow up on all levels feeling good. And yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's always some imbalance in those things I mentioned earlier that happens when you're younger, that freezes in time, that causes you to react to things differently when you're an adult, but in a way that sadly means that negative things or side effects can occur, or you just feel bad about it. Whereas if those negative things hadn't occurred when you were young, so you didn't end up with the imbalances, you'd be in a fully balanced, whole state of mind, body, spirit, however you want to think of it, as an adult, and it wouldn't affect you the way it is doing negatively. So the key is to go back and heal that inner child, unfreeze them from where they were, so you can move forward to reacting things both consciously and unconsciously as an adult, rather than consciously trying to react as an adult, but unconsciously having no choice but to react the way the program's running at the moment, which is that frozen in time, childlike state. So yeah, it's one of the most important things by far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I see a lot of people that I work with. They talk about how the childhood trauma has like really affected and like pretty much taken over their life. So I think that this would be really beneficial for them.
And even if people, and that's the people who consciously know that's the case, but even the people who don't think it's got anything to do with childhood, I promise you, going through the process in the Shitnosis book with the interactive QR code, which will guide you through the physical actions as well, making it a multi-sensory experience. Because when you can combine your sense of touch with what you hear, what you see, and what you say to yourself internally all at once, it makes it so powerful that it bypasses the critical faculty analytical area, or the nightclub doorman of the mind, as I like to think of it, sends them on a coffee break and enables you to get into the computer control room, your unconscious, subconscious imagination, to go in to delete the negative files, to install some positive mental antivirus software, and to install new programs to help you continue living the life you deserve to live, want to live, in a manner where you're leaving behind all that self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret, and all the negative shit of the past, where it deserves to be in the past.
Absolutely. So what would you give to somebody that has some problems trusting, like they have a really big blockage in the trust factory, and they're trying to figure out like, okay, I got to take a step, but I need to figure out how to trust again. What would you give to them?
Exactly the same. Whether you find some other sources for the kind of things I've talked about that are in this book, or you just save yourself time and money and get the Shitnosis book, because everything in here, if you spend enough hours, you will be able to find free ways of learning similar things on the internet. Okay. However, it'll take hours and hours and hours. So, just easier. Get the book, $17. What I would say is get the book and work on yourself, because the one person, and at the moment, if you have an issue with trusting yourself, that's the biggest obstacle. It's not about trusting other people. You can learn that day by day. First of all, you've got to be able to trust yourself, so that you know that you're in a position where consciously and unconsciously you are operating in a manner where you're keeping yourself emotionally, spiritually, physically, and on all other levels safe and in control. Once you've learned to do that for yourself, which is easier once you balance out those imbalances we've spoken about, which is the key crux of getting over your shit in life and getting your shit together in the Shitnosis book, then you can move forward and start to give people a little bit more trust, only a bit, so that little wins become bigger wins. But what you will also then be better at doing, so you'll feel safer about giving that trust, is you will have learned to trust yourself and to start to listen to your gut feeling. Okay?
Absolutely.
And to follow your heart. Don't go with logic and emotion. Logic, right? Your brain is logic, your heart's emotion. That's why sometimes people say, don't let your head rule your heart. Go with, well, actually, above all them is your gut instinct, your gut feeling. If something feels, if you feel it feels right, cool. Learn to trust yourself. Give it a bit more. And over time, you'll find how to communicate with your own self, as it were, and to trust yourself more and to stop listening to that little voice of negativity. We all have that little voice inside our heads. That sometimes might say, you're not good enough, or don't do this, or whatever. Some of what's in Shitnosis is about being able to go in and retune that voice. So when it's trying to say negative things to you that would be to your detriment, then it might start sounding really stupid like a cartoon and actually make you smile and laugh so that you ignore it and it doesn't affect you the way it once did in the past. But to turn the volume up when it tells you positive things. So, that you take it on board more. You really hear it when it goes, you did well there. You should pat yourself on the back, metaphorically. That's so much better than you would have dealt with it a week ago or a month ago. And through repetition, you develop positive habits and feelings. It can often, when you look back on it, end up feeling like a magic wand, miraculous things taken place. But when you break it down, you've achieved that miracle actually over hours, days, weeks, and months.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Out of all this process, before we go, out of all this process, what do you feel was the hardest thing for you to deal with?
The hardest thing by far, and it still occurs this sometimes, is because over time, these techniques that you'll learn in Shitnosis are ridiculously easy to implement. Can often just take a few, 10, 20, 30 seconds to use a breathing exercise and a positive self-affirmation and then feel calm and relaxed. I'm not going to have a panic attack. And there comes a point where you end up not needing to do it because you no longer react to things the way you once did in the past. You can end up forgetting how powerful they were for you when you needed them. So that then if a point in life comes that's perfectly natural for anyone to feel traumatized by or upset by, such as a very close loved one dying after a long terminal illness or something, that you don't dismiss, because in that moment of heightened negative emotion, you might actually forget that what could really help you is that simple technique that help you stop you having a mild panic attack or a severe. Because in that moment, you're so emotionally charged. And one of the hardest things is to keep reminding yourself that, look, that worked for me there can work for me here as well. And yet it does, looking back on it, seem like that was ridiculously easy. But that's because you now feel better about it all. So you can do it again. The hardest thing is to actually carry on utilizing. It's to value yourself, to continue valuing yourself enough that you keep using these techniques. It's not just as simple as get rid of all the negative from the past and here's coping mechanisms for now. Because life will throw some unexpected shit in the path. That's what we talk about in Shitnosis. There's not just the things you know about now, the habits, addictions, fears, or phobias, not feeling good enough, or having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, or being caught in the depression cycle. You could overcome all that and move forward with happiness, contentment, and all that. But some sort of unexpected shit's going to happen at some point in life. Absolutely. And that's when you need to remember, boom, you've got all the resources, at least you will have when you've, put them to use. You will have all the resources on hand to go, you know what? I need to metaphorically run that app, that software process I've got again in my neck-top computer, because now's the time it's needed. It takes that little bit of action from you. So that's the hardest thing. Even I, as the person who helped other people, still need to remind myself sometimes when, during the pandemic, a good friend of mine passed away and and yeah, I went into the grief cycle. I did that perfectly. And I'm not saying use these techniques, you don't have the grief cycle, but it's healthy to have the grief cycle, but it's not healthy to remain in it for weeks or months.
Yeah.
You know, you deserve to have a day or two, definitely, to go through that, and then use these techniques so you're not stuck in it. And then, yeah, you also deserve to, if you feel it's important, go through the ritual at the funeral as well. But this is about you being able to take control again. Because often people with issues or whatever, it's that sense of being something going out of their control. Well, this is about giving you your control back in all areas of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jonathan, thank you for being here. I really enjoyed.
Thank
I
you for
really
asking me.
enjoyed.
I really appreciate you helping me to spread the word, Sean.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm gonna order your book. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna put those into practice because I think that every approach can help somebody in some shape or way. So I'm
Exactly.
gonna
And that's
order
why
it.
there's multiple approaches in the book, because some of them will work better for people than other ones. And that's why rather than going, here's the one technique, the one and only technique you need for panic attacks, I go, look, there's a few techniques here. Test them all out and see which gives you, personally, you as a human being, because there's elements of you that are different than other people. Which of these works best for you? And then stick with that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for being here, Jonathan. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. And where can we find you if we want to look you up?
And probably the easiest is magicalguru.co.uk. That's magicalguru.co.uk, or ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. Although, to be honest, unless you want to interview me on a show or send me an email message to say, hey, thanks, I've got your book and it's helped transform my life, or something like that, you don't really need to contact me, because if you were to contact me, it means you were thinking about spending money having a session with me. And my answer would be, before you do that, save money
Yeah,
and just get a copy of Shitnosis. Because everything you need's in there. However, if there's anyone watching or listening who perhaps wants to become a diploma bearing, accredited, qualified, certified mind therapy hypnotherapist, then yeah, by all means, take a look at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com and drop me a message, because I do take pride in teaching these techniques to other therapists so that they can stop spending 6, 10, 20, 30 sessions with people and actually equip people with the tools they need within 1, 2, sometimes 3, but generally 1 or 2 sessions, so that people can transform their lives more rapidly. I take pride in helping other therapists get rid of those outdated techniques. Stop people becoming dependent on you. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about giving them the quickest possible transformation and equipping them with the tools so that they can go forth and continue helping themselves on a daily basis.
absolutely, absolutely. Everybody, thank you for being here and sitting with us and hanging out with us and watching. Uh, I'm your host, Sean, and until next time,
Ron is a
much love.
fantastic host, so please like this video, share this video, share it with your family and friends on social media to A, get more people to tune in to Sitting with Sean, and B, to help spread the messages that this wonderful podcast does.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you. And everybody, once again, thank you for sitting with me and hanging out with me. Till next time, much love.